2, 1. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Movie Roll Call. I just want to take a second to thank everyone who's been listening along so far or watching, whatever your preferred method is. Whether that's Spotify or YouTube, I know the majority of people are on Spotify typically. But yes, just thank you for continually supporting me. If you wouldn't mind leaving me a star rating on Spotify, that is extremely helpful. But yes, I'm just extremely grateful for everyone listening along. If you're watching, then you can tell that I have a different backdrop. If you are on audio, then you obviously can't see anything. But I have a new space set up for filming and recording the podcast, so I don't have to tear it down, break it apart between each episode, which was quite a bit of work. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this corner of my office has shaped up. It's nice to have this space, and it's been really fun decorating it. I think it's still going to be evolving. The decor is not quite where I want it to be at. But yeah, it's been a really exciting week getting this put together and having this dedicated space for the podcast. So I'm just excited to continue this journey, have friends sitting across from me here, and just engage in what I love to be doing, which is talking about movies and seeing movies. It's a huge hobby of mine. It's something that I've always loved. And I'd love to say that I've always wanted to do this podcast, but I really haven't. It just was a idea that came into my head like 2 months ago. And I knew that there were going to be things that I didn't know how to do and things that I have to learn. And I've spoken previously about how that's kind of the most exciting thing for me right now, is that it is combining, something that I love a lot. And it's also giving me an opportunity to grow and learn something new. Being out of school now for quite a few years, it doesn't feel like I've learned that many new skills. I mean, my job, I've definitely learned professional skills and some speaking qualities and writing emails and all those things, but I think I wanted a artistic hobby, and I'm probably beating a dead horse because I have shared this before. But yes, again, just thank you for listening. I'm very excited about this space, and like I said, it's combining a lot of passions into one. So I'm just grateful to be here and to be doing this, and for people to be listening along. So yeah, today's episode is going to be a little different. I want to focus in on a film subject matter that is near and dear to my heart, which is gay films. I know that probably sounds weird, like near and dear to his heart. What does that even mean? But a lot of gay films in culture reflect the hardships of what it means to be a gay person in reality. That's just kind of what it is. So partially I wanted to share a little bit of my own journey, my story, and why I feel so deeply connected to stories that either feature a gay love story or just a gay coming of age story. They typically hit near and dear to me, just because that's mine. It's usually harping on some of the things that I have lived through, and they can be quite emotional. A lot of them are sad. There's quite a few hit gay movies that are very sad, or deal with this theme of isolation and loneliness and heartbreak and, all these very, very, very heavy emotions. And then there's a few, as we've gotten into more modern times, where they're a little bit more optimistic and hopeful for what the future could look like. So yeah, I do want to just touch on a little bit of my own journey and my story, and apologies if I maybe stutter a little bit or get a little bit emotional. I haven't really been very open about this over the past few years. I used to be pretty vocal about where I was at in my journey with sexuality, that being that it was very much tied to my faith upbringing, and there's just a lot of messiness going on. I didn't know who I was, identity was a big subject matter for me. And it's taken a lot of time, a lot of therapy, a lot of being away from college, honestly, to be where I'm at now and just be happy with myself and not just like sit in sorrow and dread every single day of my life because of this thing that is in the back of my mind, I guess. So really this journey starts when I was young. I was thinking about it the other day. I used to be like a huge spitfire for stereotypes, and I almost want to get back into that today on the podcast. What I mean by that is I always felt like I didn't belong, which is common for gay people, obviously. I didn't really fit in with other guys, and I felt like stereotypically I was going against the grain on a lot of things. And as I grew up and got into, being a teenager and then going to college, I was very heavy-handed on fighting against these narratives that I believe men and women are more similar than they are different. And I think in the Christian realm, there is a lot of time spent on making sure people understand that men and women are very different and they're different roles. And I think there are different gender roles that are appropriate. However, I did not like, and I do not like when people back things, the characteristics of a man and a woman by stereotypes, by the common findings of each gender rather than the exceptions, because I felt like I had many exceptions when it came to overall stereotypes. Like I am pretty sporty, but it's not like my main focus. It's not something that I wanted to be doing in high school. I wanted to draw, I wanted to paint, I wanted to do pottery. I was just an artist. I have always been an emotional person, and I've heard in school, I've heard in preachings, I've heard at church, I've heard in all these different places people using the tagline like women are more emotional, men are not supposed to be. I hate that. I genuinely hate that. I think we've come a long way since, growing up in the early 2000s. I think we've really come a long way in terms of breaking down what it means to be a man or a woman and what's acceptable and what's not. But I'm a huge advocate for men being able to share their feelings, and that's just a part of life. It does not make you weak. It doesn't make you any less of a man. It just makes you a person. But I felt so much otherness being an emotional child, and then constantly being labeled gay. So I had stereotypical feminine qualities as a kid, and was being told I was gay long before I even knew what the definition of that word was, and was honestly frustrated by it, because when you are a kid, when someone is labeling you as gay, they're not necessarily saying a nice thing, no matter how you end up coming to feel about the term gay. People used it and still do, use it synonymously with words like weird or bad or gross or different. It was a synonym for different bad words. Like, it was not a compliment. You understood, even without knowing the definition, you understood that it was derogatory as a child in its own way. So that had a massive impact on how I grew up and who I was as a person, and how I saw myself versus how other people saw me. And it just felt like it was always this thing that was there. And so genuinely, I don't know if I liked guys first or if I was told that I liked guys and didn't like guys. Like, I don't know how that works. It's that like nature versus nurture. Are you born gay or are you not? I, at this point, definitely think that it was something that I was born with. It's just who I am. It's a part of my story. I'm not a gay person. I'm a person who happens to be gay. It's just one shard of glass in the overall stained glass window of who I am as a person. It's not the end all be all of my personality. It doesn't impact every single aspect of my life, but it does impact a majority of my lived experiences, and that's reflected in in how I appreciate films that I want to talk about today. Yeah, so that was my early upbringing, constantly being labeled as gay, not knowing how I felt about it, but being extremely scared that by the time that I realized that I was attracted to other guys, I was panicking. I was in a very religious environment. I was praying every single night, sobbing. I did not want that to be my reality. I wanted to be 22 and married and have 2 kids before the age of like 25. That's just what I thought life was going to look like for me. So fast forward, I'm 26 now. That is not the case at all. So it's been a long journey to get to where I am today. So we can touch on, I mean, middle school was kind of similar. I did, middle school date girls, which was like literally just say you were boyfriend and girlfriend at school. But I didn't really hang out with people from school outside of school because I was scared. I really retreated my whole life into, maybe retreated isn't the right word, but I separated out my life from school and church, and I just invested a lot of time in church, which I think happens a lot to gay kids, is it's easier to blend in there. You know the right things to say, the right things to do. It's just a culture that is easier to blend into. And so fast forwarding through middle school and high school, I decided that I wanted to go to Liberty University. If you don't know what Liberty is, it's the largest Christian school in the world. A very evangelical university. I went there for 2 reasons, really. My older sister Taylor went there, and I saw I glorified the life she was living in school. She had mass amounts of friends. It looked like life was perfect. Back then, I just, didn't have a full look into her life. I'm not saying she didn't like her time at Liberty, but I thought there were no flaws. I thought she was having the best time with the best people in the best place. And I idolized that, and I wanted to go there for that reason. The other part being is that I wanted to run away again from these thoughts that I was having, that I might be gay. And the best way to do that, I thought, was to continue blending in with a school full of people with a like-minded goal of going to a Christian university and just going to this place that seemed like an endless summer camp, which in hindsight was a interesting decision to be made on my on my choice, and I don't regret it. It's brought me to where I am today, but it was a hard time reconciling, even in my first few months at the school. Okay, this is not something that's going away. It's something that got me into trouble with friends, with the school, and all of that stuff just kind of blew up in my face, and I had to come to terms with the reality that this is definitely a part of my story. And from there, college was a hard experience for me. It was less, truthfully, transparently, it was less about school, and it was more about who am I, what do I believe, what do I believe about myself. So yeah, it was a long 3.5 years of what felt like turmoil. And then I left college. It was during COVID, and I moved to Tennessee, and I began to start my life here, and kind of pick up some of those pieces that broke a little bit in college. And in that journey, I think I started to find peace in myself. I made it a goal. I don't want to think about my sexuality every single day of my life, because I was having a hard time reconciling who I was. And so I made that goal. I wrote a book of my experiences from childhood to college, and it was a therapeutic experience to be working part-time for a year and writing and journaling and editing and working with a friend who was helping guide me in writing, and I wrote this book. It wasn't that long, but I was excited to be writing a book and sharing my story. And then I finished the book, and I was rereading it, and I was close to putting it out. And I just thought to myself, I don't know if I believe this. I was trying to spread this message that you can be a Christian and acknowledge that you have attractions at the same time and just live a completely celibate life. And I realized that that's just not really what I wanted. I was in such loneliness and sorrow and dread just every day, thinking that I was spreading this message that was correct to me. And at that point, it just didn't start to feel correct. And I was stressed out of my mind, wanting to release this book that I'd worked so hard on, I'd spent so much time on, and it didn't feel accurate anymore. It didn't feel like it fully represented me. I didn't want to bear the responsibility of telling people how to live, because really it was, the goal of writing my book was, one, for me, and two, I wanted to ingrain empathy into the hearts of Christians who didn't understand people who are gay. I had been raised in the church. I was going to a Christian school. I was constantly at odds with people who did not understand me, who did not legitimize the experiences I was going through. Some people did. I have amazing friends that I'm still in contact with, obviously, from school, and people who supported me, and this, that, and the other. But constantly at odds with people grappling with my story and how I was supposed to fit into this puzzle piece of church life. And I just found that it wasn't really working for me. And it was causing me immense stress. I was having, around like 2022, maybe 2021, 2022, I was having these like heart twisting pains, like lurches in my heart that were so immobilizing. They made me feel like, I obviously don't know what a heart attack is supposed to feel like, but my heart was just lurching so much. Like just an agonizing twisting that was stopping me in my place. It was making me feel like I couldn't do anything. Like I physically could not do anything because the way it was twisting, it felt like if I moved a different way, it was going to hurt even more and something more serious was going to happen. Like that's how specific this feeling was. I'm not trying to over exaggerate how scary it felt within my body, that something felt wrong and that needed attention. So I ended up going to a cardiologist. Is that the right word? A heart doctor. That's what I'll say. Even though I think that's right. I went to Vanderbilt. I started seeing a heart doctor. We did stress tests. We did a blood test. I went back for probably 3 visits. And it finally reached the point where he's like, there's nothing on your test. Like, are you just stressed out? And I was like, yeah, I think I am. I guess what I'm trying to say by that is, if this is not a part of your lived experience, if it's not something you've dealt with, then you may not know what it's like to feel at times like you're completely at odds with the world, in the sense that there's all these people who are making it seem like your story is illegitimate and wrong and doesn't fit into this world. Like you don't have a place in this world. And those two things competing, it's why there's so much. It's why LGBTQ individuals are more likely to harm themselves and commit suicide. Sometimes you're made to feel like you don't know what your place in reality is. And I think that's a hard thing to convey to people. I don't think a lot of people understand why we feel that way and why words matter and why it's just important, even if you would disagree with someone in their lifestyle, to just love and be there for them, listen to them, acknowledge the experience that they're having, and then go from there. It can just be a little bit overwhelming. So that's just what I wanted to share from that. And through that experience, the heart lurches, the immense pain that I was pushed to go to the doctor because I seriously felt like something was wrong with me. I decided that something needed to change. I needed to swap my approach. I've been, if we consider this like an A/B test, I've been testing out strategy A for about 24 years. So I started making some changes, and I started to not focus on my sexuality as much while accepting that it's something that's there and I don't necessarily need to fight against it. And there's been a lot of peace and a lot less sorrow since then. So that's something that I just will not apologize for. I know that a lot of people haven't heard my perspective on this, 2021 or 2022, unless you're following me maybe on TikTok. I haven't been very forward with my personal life like I was in college. I don't regret what I was doing in college. I was writing blogs. I was seeking again to make sure that Christians understood why empathy and understanding for gay people's stories matter. Even if you disagree, there's things that you can acknowledge about our journey being hard, and why it's really complex for us. So yeah, that's just a little bit about my story, and where I've essentially come from. And now in a lighter sense, but also not really, because some of the movies are a little dark and bleak and depressing. Let's talk about movies. So there's this thing that I call, based off of the experiences that I just described to you, the heart lurching, the going to the doctor, the feeling alone, the increase of suicidal ideation among LGBTQ people. There's this concept, this theme of a thing that I call the big gay sad, that no matter what's going on, no matter where you're at with your sexuality, I believe, at least from my experience, that there's just this lingering sadness sometimes that comes with navigating the world that creeps in every once in a while, where you kind of curl up into a little bit of a ball, and it's just like sad that the world is the way that it is. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but essentially, like, it's not that you hate being gay, it's just that you hate the struggles that maybe come with it at times, and the fact that they exist, and that reality is the way that it is. But at the same time, this big gay sadness feels like sort of a hug, because it's a place you're familiar with. Because so many gay kids that I know, not kids, but people who have grown up to be, adults my age, that I've spoken to about their stories, they all have something similar, especially from the church background and people I know at Liberty, is that there is the common theme of crying out, praying as a young kid for something to change, for like pleading desperately for there to be a difference in who they are as a person, so that they don't have to deal with it. And I think that's why that sadness, even though it can be a little bit dark, can also feel a little bit comforting, because it's a place that you've been to in your life so long before. You've always known it. It's kind of always been there. And it's kind of just you. So then once you're comfortable with yourself, this lingering concept of what it means to be gay in life, that isolation can feel comforting at times. It's both like sorrowful and comforting. Again, I don't know if I'm making sense. I don't know if it's just me. But there's an element of me that to a degree enjoys being sad, because I got really used to it for the first 24 years of my life. And like I said, the past 2 years has been immensely better. High school, college, I feel like I was extremely emotional. I cried frequently. I just felt like there were always big events happening. And I'm just really grateful for mid to late 20s being a more even, steady line for me, where I feel a little bit more balanced and I know how to navigate this world a little bit lighter than I used to. And just finding the joy in things. I don't want to be sitting in sorrow, and so I don't. Unless I'm watching a movie that is intentionally sorrowful, which is what we'll be talking about. So to kick things off, there are two. We've had a very gay September-filled movie schedule. So far in September, we've had two. Well, I take that back because Twinless. So if you don't know what Twinless is, Twinless starring James Sweeney and Dylan O'Brien. This is written and directed by James Sweeney, who also co-stars alongside Dylan O'Brien. I thought this was more of a gay film than I guess it actually turned out to be. So the synopsis is that two guys who both have twin brothers, their twin brother dies, and then they meet in a support group for people who have lost their twin. That's pretty much the whole synopsis. That's kind of what you know going into this movie, and you kind of think these two guys may end up falling in love through the course of the twin group, but that's actually not the case. I'm not going to get too far into it, just because it's a movie that is best seen without knowing much. So I would recommend Twinless. It has like thriller elements to it. It goes in a lot of different directions. It's not exactly what it says it is, which I really appreciated. And it was a very interesting movie. It is pretty somber. It can be a little bit sad, but it's got bits of humor in it. But the reason I'm kind of blurring past it a little bit is it's not necessarily an LGBT movie. It has LGBTQ characters, but it's not necessarily the central themes aren't based around one of the main characters being gay. It's just kind of a plot line in it. So recommend watching, but we'll kind of skirt past that one. What I do want to spend a little bit more time on is The History of Sound, which just came out in theaters this weekend, starring Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. Now, Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor have both risen up in the movie industry over the past few years. Paul Mescal from Normal Hearts, from Gladiator 2. He's kind of been on the up and up for a little bit now. And then Josh O'Connor has had a few indie movies. He was recently in Challengers last year, and then he's about to be in the third Knives Out film. So these are two actors who have been on my radar, but I think the world's radar over the past few years, and they're incredible actors. So right away, you don't even have to tell me the plot. I'm going to go see it. But me and Allie went and saw it last night. And this film is very reminiscent of Brokeback Mountain. Very similar storyline. It is a period piece. It starts, I believe, in the first scene was 1910. And it progresses all the way through like 1920 something. 25 maybe. So it spans some time. I don't hate period pieces. This was a good period piece to watch. A lot of people are saying this movie is dull. Actually, let me get into the synopsis first. I'm skipping around. The synopsis is that during World War I, these two American guys meet at university. They're both singers. They meet at university, quickly get connected. They're kind of infatuated with each other because of their love for music. And then they go on a journey where they document sound through a very analog, old way of capturing sound through wax cylinders. I wasn't very aware of this process until the movie. They go on this journey capturing sound, and so it's about their love story, and then how it proceeds over time. The thing about it, though, is that I described this feeling of the big gay stab, and The History of Sound is one of the best movies that I've seen encapsulate that feeling, where the cinematography in this film is very dreary. It can be a bit dark. It's like peak fall and winter at times, and the leaves, there's no leaves on the trees. Like everything feels a little bit dead. There's, that low lighting, 5 o'clock. I guess it's kind of depending on where you are regionally, but like East Coast winter time gets to be like 5 o'clock and it's almost dark enough, but you can see the silhouette of the trees, and like that just feels very peak winter to me. That visual, and so the cinematography for this film is a little bit dreary, but it works for what they're trying to convey. I saw a review that described it like if a movie were rain tapping on the window. Like sometimes rain is that balance between, it like sucks because it's wet outside and it's kind of dreary and sad, but at the same time it's peaceful in its own way. That is a good description of this movie. It is a little bit dull, but in like a peaceful, melodic way. There's no big monologues. There's no like crazy outbursts. There's not even that many like exciting, capturable moments in the film, but it's just a beautiful love story for the time, or maybe tragedy. I don't know if that's a spoiler, so sorry, but I think watching a gay movie that takes place in 1910, you're pretty aware going in that this is not going to be like the greatest happy ending. So I think it was very good at encapsulating that feeling, and especially how I would represent it, just the sorrowness, but also like comforting aspect of rain tapping on the window, that isolation that people get so used to being gay. My beef with the movie, though, is that every single element that is in the film, every single building block that's there, could have made a masterpiece, but yet the cinematography being a little bit ugly, or the sound is very analog and acoustic, and digs into the folk aspect of the music of the time, which is fair, but there's no like score in the background really, so it's not helping like punch the emotion in through the scenes. It's not carrying me over the finish line. Like I could tell while watching some scenes, I'm supposed to feel something right here, but they're just not getting me over the line, which was so frustrating because in my mind I'm pulling to like this more, but they aren't doing their half of the work, which is sometimes I think liking a movie is half your optimism, half the movie actually being good. And so I do like this movie, but I wanted to love it, and it was there. My mind was latching on to what they were giving, but they weren't fully meeting me, if that makes any sense at all. So my beef with the film is actually like more of how it was put together rather than the plot or how it was filmed, which is a very weird problem to have. And I wrote this in Letterboxd as well. Usually, if there's a bad movie, it's because of the performances or how it looks, the plot. And in this case, I like the plot. I love the performances. I don't necessarily love how it looks, but really what it comes down to is how it was edited, how they use sound to convey messaging in a film about sound was a little bit criminal to me and knocked a few points off my overall score. I do think it's definitely worth the watch. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. So 70%, that's good. But that is me putting a little bit of optimism into my review. They had the building blocks and the performances so good that it could have been far superior than maybe it is. But regardless, nonetheless, still a very good film, worth the watch, especially if you like the two main actors in the film. Um, there's not. It's easy. I have a list on Letterboxd of LGBTQ films ranked, and that's easy to do because there's not like an endless amount of them. There's a few big hitters. Moonlight, All of Us Strangers, Love, Simon. Um, we'll talk about a few of them briefly. All of Us Strangers, on the same note as Paul Mescal. I forgot to mention that Paul Mescal was also in All of Us Strangers. All of Us Strangers, starring Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott. The best movie that I will never watch again. Maybe I'll watch it at some point in the future, but truly gutted me. If you don't know what happens, do not look it up. Heart-wrenching, like vomiting worth heart-wrenching. Not actually, but close. It's so devastating. I don't know who thought of this plot, but it is horrendously sad. And it is definitely worth at least one watch. But yeah, that's where I think I first met Paul Mescal. So I would recommend that. It's one of the highest rated gay films that I've ever watched. I think both critically and from my own personal perspective. It's just a really magnificent, haunting movie. Another one, obviously, Brokeback Mountain is a pillar in gay cinema for what it is, and the passion and dedication from both Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger. I've read so much stuff about how Heath Ledger was very defensive over people making jokes about this film, and he really believed in the messaging. And so I've always really respected that movie. It's a pillar. It's a classic, especially for the time that it was made. If you haven't seen Brokeback Mountain, what are you doing? So good. What else do we have? Oh, a personal favorite, Love, Simon. This isn't a lot of gay people. A common perspective that I've heard from gay people is that Love, Simon is kind of a tame approach to, a gay story. I disagree. And this is actually going to tie well into our stereotypes conversation. A lot of people are obsessed with boxes and labels, and if you're this, then it automatically means this for you. If you're this, then it automatically means this. So a lot of people, and a lot of gay people specifically, people are guilty of this in different ways. But if we're looking at just the gay community, a lot of times they can be guilty of thinking that what being gay to them is what it should be for you. So in the way that you dress, in the way that you present yourself, in the way that you invite femininity into your life, like no matter how you're navigating your own sexuality, it can come out differently, is what I'm trying to say. And sexuality is not implicitly tied to, or explicitly tied to, how you act or how you dress or how you engage in hobbies, etc., etc. You can be a gay person who loves sports. You can be a gay person who loves art. You can be a gay person who dresses feminine. You can be a gay person who dresses masculine. Let's not limit where people are at with how they approach who they are. That's what makes life exciting, is that we're all different. And I'd love all people to be a little bit more relaxed on stereotypes and boxes, but my ask for the gay community is that they relax on what they think is gay. And you see this all the time in culture too. My biggest example is celebrities that people latch onto, and they start trying to decipher their sexuality, and they push these narratives that, sometimes it's accurate. It can be accurate. That's why stereotypes exist, because sometimes it does create an accurate basis for assumptions, which is both good and bad. More often than not, in terms of sexuality, it's bad. It's bad for you to look at Shawn Mendes and go, that's a fruity man, and bully him online for years and years and years. to the point where he has to, go on stage at concerts and be like, hey guys, still figuring myself out. Please leave me alone. And he didn't even say that because he's nicer than that. He's just like, hey, still figuring myself out. When he has so much, he has every right and excuse to be mad at people trying to dictate who he is on not his timeline. He very well could be bisexual or gay. He doesn't owe you that confirmation as the general public, a fan. Like, chill out. People can do whatever they want. It's also a similar conversation to like queer baiting, where people instantly assume that major stars are doing something to appeal to gay fans. Blah 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 blah. It all boils down to stereotypes. And so bringing that back to Love, Simon, I've heard gay criticism that Love, Simon isn't quite gay enough. And I disagree. Mostly because Love, Simon is probably my favorite. It's not, let me be clear. Love, Simon is not the best made gay movie, but it is probably my favorite in terms of like enjoyment. The reason being is that I have so many similarities to the character of Simon in Love, Simon. Don't believe me. For starters, we're both gay. It was a very big secret for many years, and it kind of festered within us that we had this secret. We were both extorted / blackmailed for being gay. More on that in a second. Third, we both hate SeaWorld. He makes a knock at SeaWorld in the Love, Simon movie, and I think it's hilarious because I hate SeaWorld. And Love, Simon came out in, I believe, 2017, and that's right around a few years prior. What is it, Blackfish? What's the huge documentary that made everyone hate SeaWorld except for some people? Anyways, hate SeaWorld, love that Love, Simon calls that out. So I feel a personal connection to Love, Simon because I feel like it's very similar to my own story in some regard. And I really reject the narrative that it's not a gay enough movie and he's not a like gay enough person. He wears plain clothes before and after coming out. That's very much me. I don't like. I'm a very like simple dresser. I want no patterns. I hate logos. I don't want any of that going on. So I feel represented by him in that way, and just his personality. He's not like an overly extroverted character or person like sometimes the gay sidekick in a movie is. So I just feel very connected to this character. But the most connected I feel to the character of Love, Simon, if you haven't seen the movie, the synopsis being that this high school student named Simon goes to a school in the probably suburbs of, I believe it's Atlanta, and his school has a anonymous like blog thing, almost like, what was it, like Yik Yak and these other popular sites that gain traction for college students. So there's this blog for his school, dedicated to his school, where people come on and they post anonymous things. So obviously high schoolers are eating that shit up. They're posting anonymously about crushes and secrets and blah, 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 blah. A recipe for disaster. So the synopsis of this movie is that, in book, it's a good book as well, is that Simon starts emailing a kid who anonymously says he's gay on the Creek Secrets page. So neither of them know each other's identity. They're using different email addresses, and they start having like a pen pal relationship, friendship. And it's exciting for them, yada, yada, yada. Well, one day, a guy reads Simon's emails after he's done with using the computer. He sees the anonymous emails, but he knows it was Simon because he just left the computer. And he starts to blackmail him. He wants him to do something for him in exchange for not outing him as a person. So he's being basically harassed by this guy. And eventually, obviously, spoiler alert, the secret comes out later in the movie through online posts. So one thing I did skip over about my story is that when I was in college, I was away at summer camp, and somebody from Liberty, my Christian university, messaged me on Facebook Messenger and said in summarization, it was a long paragraph. They were using the name KDO. That was their anonymous name. And the message basically described like actions I had taken over the years, some truth, some lies. A guy I was involved with my freshman year of college. How this person was worried about me as their friend. And the way that they had written it was in quotation marks, and then the message following it was, your dad will be in contact with you soon. So they were basically saying, hey, I sent this to you, but I also sent this to your dad. So obviously I'm freaking out. At this time in life, no one in my family knew that this was something that I was dealing with. My sexuality, who I was, all these questions. So they're posting that. I'm freaking out. I kind of ignore it because I didn't know what else to do. I broke down to one person about it and got calm enough. A few days later, though, however, I get back to my phone on a break, and I was going to say thousands, but obviously that's dramatic. I have probably 100 messages, 50 to 75 maybe, of people texting me or commenting online, something that I'm being tagged in. The texts are saying, I'm so sorry, Cole, I'm so sorry this happened. I'm confused. I don't know what's happening. What do you mean you're sorry? Like, what has happened? Katie Yell, whoever that is, went on to our version of Creek Secrets, like in Love, Simon. We had a page on Liberty had a Facebook page run by students called LU Crushes, an anonymous forum for posting, hey, I saw this person at the library on campus today wearing a blue shirt and they're extremely cute, or some shit like that. Completely anonymous. Other things would be posted on there, like, I don't know, random like hobby things, whatever. But yeah, anonymous posting. Again, recipe for disaster. So this anonymous person puts into LU Crushes, which is accessible to the whole entire current student body, plus alumni. Like, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this group chat. Because if you went to Liberty, you were probably in it, and you might not, take the initiative to just leave it. So there's so many people in this group chat, this group page. So this anonymous person puts in the chat, Cole and blank are in a gay relationship on my Christian university's biggest student-led page. Okay, which that wasn't even true at the time. And now hundreds of thousands of people have seen my name and the word gay that go to my college university. So doubling down, I'm freaking out. I'm being bullied online by this person who's sharing something with the world that I had not shared with the world. So yeah, I was getting texts from people who I was currently going to school with. I was having people come up to me at camp saying, hey, I know this other person who goes to your school that you don't know, and they saw that post, and I'm really sorry. Like, that's how broad this was, is people I didn't even know were telling other people who did know me that they saw it. Like, yeah, so that was a thing. And a very defining, huge moment in life. Because it sounds like a movie. And so then when I finally watched Love, Simon, I was like, oh, the movie seems so specific, and there's millions of people who have seen the movie Love, Simon, and they don't relate to that film. And yet when I watch that film, I see events and things that have happened exactly the same way. One thing I love about the movie Love, Simon is that Simon, in his own way to protect himself, goes along with the blackmailing. He's going along with the perpetrator, trying to help him in his goal so that he's not outed. And in that fashion, he hurts his own friends. And I think that is so accurate for a gay person coming out, is that it gets so messy, you get so scared, you retreat within yourself, you want to just shell up and hide, that sometimes you're willing to hurt people in order for this huge secret to not come out. I have my fair share of that, and that's definitely reflected in the film in a real and raw way, which I appreciate. So yeah, that is why I love Simon, because we were both bullied online. We were both cyberbullied about being gay, and now jokes on them. I still know who that person was, which is inherently frustrating. To know that there was somebody that I was probably in a room with, or did life with, or spent time with, or potentially called friend, who was doing that to me. Biggest mystery of my life. But what can you do? They did their thing. I hope they struggle to live with it transparently. I'm sure they're fine, but it's a part of my story now, and they are a villain, and I hope that in their minds they know that they're a villain, but they might not. But that's why I love Simon. Gosh, we've only talked about like 4 gay movies, and there's quite a few, and we're like almost an hour in. So again, thank you guys for listening. Oh, there's Loki, who's joined the podcast. Do you have anything to say, Loki, besides a purr? No. Okay. So those are a few examples of heartbreaking. Love, Simon is less. It's more of a like kind of a rom-com. But I also really enjoy this wave of optimistic gay movies that we've had. I mean, Red, White, and Royal Blue is so ridiculously hallmarky and campy, but in a good way. Oh, come here. And I think it's good to have movies like that. They don't all have to be huge and gay and sad. They can be optimistic and funny and corny and cheesy. They can be all the things that straight people have. It doesn't necessarily have to be this sorrowful plot. So I really enjoyed that aspect of movies like Red, White, and Royal Blue. Well, this is clearly a subject that I could talk about for hours. If you're interested in seeing more of my ranked list when it comes to LGBT-focused movies, I'd recommend going to my Letterboxd. You can typically find the link on most of my socials. And I have a whole list of films that I've watched and ranked. You can see my score for those depending on how I feel about them. But I do not want to go over an hour on this podcast. I think that's a little bit much. But this has been a really special episode for me. A new setup. I wanted to just kind of share the heart behind some of my story and why I love these specific movies. And again, just want to thank you guys for being here. This is a fun outlet for me. Please leave a star rating if you can. Yeah, thank you guys for listening.